I don't think budgeting works, frankly. And I would rather have people focus on increasing their income, increasing the value that they provide in the marketplace so that they can earn more, so that they can get to that emergency fund solved faster.
Financial independence,
freedom,
financial picture,
independent financially,
financial future,
financial freedom and wealth,
financial independence.
Get your fill, financial independence and long life. Welcome to another episode of Get Your Fill, Financial Independence and Long Life, where we explore ways to achieve those two goals. And cool people come on to help us, like today, Kim Butler. She is a financial strategist. Oh, this is going to be a good start if I can't even pronounce strategist. She's an 11-time author, and we're going to talk about that because her new book's coming out. She helps young families to confidently build and protect wealth so they don't slide backwards. And then I'm not sure. I guess you'll talk about this, Kim. How do you learn best? Reading, listening, or watching? That's the end of her intro. So why don't we start with that? Why don't you tell us what you mean by that?
I think that is the best question ever, is to get clear on how people learn. So when I'm first meeting somebody, I love to ask, how do you learn best? Do you like to read, listen, or watch? Mm-hmm. And of course, we know there's a fourth learning modality, which is getting our hands on things, right? It's why we create things like card games and such for people to get their hands on, especially because the financial world is very esoteric and intangible. Interestingly enough, a lot of people don't know how they learn best. And so often when I ask that question, they'll kind of think, well, I think it's, and some people know right away. Some people say, I don't know, I've never thought about that. And they'll think for a minute, and then they'll typically be able to identify one or maybe two ways. And then I love to be able to send them material in their favorite learning modality.
Very smart, very wise. So maybe the people we're talking, well, actually, some of the people we're talking to today are just listening. Some are watching and listening, but I don't know if we can help them to actually do anything. That's how I like to learn, like get my hands dirty. And, people can talk. I just had this experience. I'm taking over the treasury role in the Rotary Club. And the guy who's been doing it has been doing it for, I don't know, since, so-and-so was in short pants, but it's, a long, long time. And he's explaining to me, like, there's all this and that and accounts, and I've got this program and that program. And I'm just like, I'm thinking Excel spreadsheet. Why we got like 10 members. Like, why do we have all this stuff,
Simplify.
So, and he's just like wanting to tell me. And I'm just like, I'm hearing you and I see your lips moving, but I just have no clue what you're talking about. So let me get in there. Let me play around with the software. Let me, try everything. And then if I have a question, I'll call you, because I just don't know what you're saying right now. It's too easy to zone out for me when I'm hearing things.
It is such a thing. And I think it's really cool space in our world today, because people are realizing that there is a large section of society that absolutely must get their hands on things to learn.
Yeah.
And so, yes, I have puzzles and games and other things that facilitate that. Even though we're in a very intangible industry, it's still super important. So kudos to you for knowing how you learn and, doing the best that you can with it, even though, sometimes you got to deal with putting that in second place.
Yeah, that's true. There's certain things that are only available in certain ways. But so let's talk about, I like the word in your introduction, the word confidently, because I feel like that's something that's missing in a lot of financial planning, is that, people don't know, well, how long can I actually live do you know what I mean? Like, that's a thing. Like, I'm going to run out of money at X age. So what happens if I live longer? So how can you really be confident that when you retire, that you're going to be able to have fun and live an indefinite amount of time, or that your kids will definitely be able to go to college, or whatever your financial goals are? How can you help us with that confidence piece?
Absolutely. That is a great question, because lack of financial confidence causes a lot of stress in families and in individuals. And so to me, the very beginning of financial confidence is an emergency opportunity fund. It's that foundational level. If you like real estate, it's the cement foundation. We're talking solid bricks and mortar. And if you look at your personal finances like a building, you may want to build a 2-story building, or maybe it's a 10-story building. Well, you got to have that foundation first. And so emergency slash opportunity fund, most financial people just call it emergency. I don't, for a very specific reason, is the foundation. Now, why both words, right? Because hopefully very quickly you've solved your emergency fund. And here's another fun question. How much should that be? Most people have not thought about that. And every family should have a number. Is it 10 grand? Is it 100 grand? Oprah Winfrey's publicly stated hers is $7 million. Great. What? I know, isn't that funny?
It's a big emergency.
Uh-huh.
That's not a hot water heater we're talking about.
Whatever your deal is, right? Because cash flow issues don't go away. They just get bigger zeros on them. You know, if Oprah's got an emergency, I'm not surprised that it might be $1 million emergency or whatever. Right. So identify your emergency fund number. The typical recommendation is 6 to 12 months of expenses, especially if you're going to be entrepreneurial. You want to go to that 12-month side. Yeah. Pick the number and solve it. Put that money in a bank or credit union, somewhere simple, and check it off so that you can stop thinking about emergencies. That is step one to financial confidence, right? The knowledge mentally and in your heart that you know you can solve emergencies. Okay, done. Now you want to start building that opportunity fund. Okay, how high is up, right? If you're an accredited investor, maybe your opportunity fund's 100 grand because you know you need that, or $250,000, whatever your kind of minimum investment is. Great, work on that. If you're not an accredited investor, then maybe your opportunity fund is 10 grand for your next real estate deal or whatever it is. But start to work on that opportunity fund and shift your focus to building for opportunities. Maybe it's to start your next business, or to start your first business, or to leave your day job, corporate job, whatever. Start building your opportunity fund, because that we can get excited about. And we want to build that up so that we can take advantage of opportunities. So confidence, emergency opportunity fund, step one. And I've got some more, but how are we doing?
Great. This is great. The only thing that's kind of popping into my head is when we think about the average person trying to save a whole year's worth of expenses, that might take them 10 years to do, right? I mean, is there a faster way to do that? Or are there tricks or tips or something to kind of get to that point? Because I would think that would be sort of daunting for some people.
It can be. And as it relates to confidence, I don't think that there is necessarily a shortcut. And that's because the tips and tricks and shortcuts and hacks to get there faster can potentially lose money. And so that's the bottom line of it. If you are really wanting the confidence, then it's the slow, boring way. And I'm sorry, that's a bummer of a message. So maybe a better message is, let's work on increasing income, right? Let's add a gig. Let's do some work on the weekends. Let's go ahead and start that business. Keep your day job, but start that business. I mean, there's 24 hours in every day, 8 for sleeping, a good 4 for everything else that we need to do. 8 for working, that's still 4 hours every day. Okay, parenting, maybe cut that number in half, but couple hours every day that you could be spending on increasing your income. That could be by increasing your skills so that you can earn more at the work that you're already doing, or it could be really delving into that next business that you want, or the business that you want to start, or what have you. So that is a tip, is to just work on increasing the income rather than trying to reduce the expenses. Because that's, for a lot of families, that's a race to the bottom. Like, you know, their expenses are already as low as they can possibly get them. Although it is always a fun exercise to look at exactly how you're spending every penny every month and figure out maybe what you can not do or not eat or not whatever. But that's not my favorite approach, right? Like I don't think budgeting works, frankly. And I would rather have people focus on increasing their income, increasing the value that they provide in the marketplace so that they can earn more, so that they can get to that emergency fund solved faster.
Yeah. Well, and if you're increasing your income and not increasing your expenses, then then you can, yeah, you can just say, okay, all the money I make doing this side hustle is going to go toward my emergency fund, and that will allow me to have it, because I do think that the closer you get to that goal, the more excited you get and the more momentum. And you might say, well, let's just not eat out for the rest of the year. And then we're going to be able to, right? Because then you're making that sacrifice in an excited way, not just like, oh, we can't eat out because we can't afford it because we have to save this, right? I mean, but that's a good question about the sort of that happy place between putting the money away and working toward that goal of, just having a year's worth of expenses, but not feeling as though, this is like, not feeling like you're living, I don't know, on ramen
Absolutely.
noodles, I guess,
Yeah. Yeah. And the key there is to just find things that are fun to do that don't cost any money or
Yeah.
cost very little money so that you can still have your treats, et cetera, but you are not spending money to have those treats. And so again, it's at everybody's level of the game and it's doable. If this is important to you, it is absolutely doable.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why it's good that you're starting with young people, right? Young families, young people just getting together, because then you've got that energy and you've got the time, right? You've got time to watch these things grow and evolve and all that. So, okay. So how about like how does it normally work? Like when you first start working with people, how you ask them how they learn, and then once they tell you, like, what happens next?
Then then we identify the emergency fund. So we pick a number, and a lot of people already have that solved. So,
Yeah.
okay, let's pretend that that's solved. Check that off. Now we're going to start to work on the opportunity fund, and we start to build that up. And maybe it's the same habit that they had been in building up the emergency fund, but they didn't ever really think about those extra dollars as opportunity. And so now it's very, very important that the first few opportunities that we pursue are things that are sure deals, SURE, right? Because so much of the investment world, which we all love to talk about investments, they're super sexy and they're lots of fun and they're inspiring and et cetera, and they can lose money. And this is what nobody's talking about. And this is why I enjoy my practice so much is, first of all, most financial people don't talk about the emergency fund either. They definitely don't talk about the opportunity fund, and they don't typically talk about any level of that foundational work of savings as a verb and savings as a noun, actually storing the savings.
Yeah.
Because they want to get to the investments. And I get it. That's the sexy stuff. But I've been helping people with personal finances for over 30 years, and I have seen millions of dollars lost. Millions. Some of it myself, because I made mistakes too. Some of it clients that I was involved in, some of it clients that I wasn't involved in, some of it, because I heard from somebody else, but millions of dollars lost. So when you're younger, especially, and you're pursuing those opportunities, or frankly, even if you're quote older in life, but you kind of feel like you're starting over, maybe you are literally because of something that happened, or maybe you just never really got your act together all during your 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, like it happens. Start with things that are certain. You want to talk about building confidence? You got to start with things that are certain, CERTAIN. And I use that word on purpose, not secure, because securities like mutual funds and stocks, right? That's typically where people want to go. And it's really unfortunate that they're called that, because we all know that you can lose money in that space. Maybe yours won't. Maybe your mutual fund's going to be fabulous. And I want that for you. But the fact is, we've got to make sure that we've got an opportunity fund that's certain, and that any of our first investments that we do are certain. We're talking very boring stuff like whole life insurance, oldest financial product in the marketplace, 150 to 200 years old, even a 10 can in the backyard, even cash in a safe, like in your home. I don't necessarily recommend that, but for some people, that's what's certain to them. Possibly bonds, CDs. I'm talking that really base level stuff that, again, no financial person wants to talk about because they're not fun and sexy. Now, does that mean you don't put any money in fill in the blank, S&P 500 index fund, Bitcoin, you name it. No, it doesn't mean you don't. But if you're going to get serious about money, you've got to have your emergency fund and you've got to have your opportunity fund. And it's got to be in a place where it absolutely, positively cannot go down. And that will bring you confidence.
But I wouldn't call like buying bonds an opportunity. Like I would think of an opportunity fund would be like, oh, this, there's an opportunity to buy my neighbor's house that's distressed and I can fix it up. And now luckily I have this nice fund that I can tap into. Is that kind of what you had in
Yes.
mind?
So opportunity funds are still liquid enough. And I have to admit, bonds are like the last on my list also. Nevertheless, opportunity funds are liquid enough that they can pursue opportunities. But that's the thing. So many people follow what I call very typical advice, which is to max out their 401k. Well, if that's what you're doing, maybe you've got your emergency fund and then you're maxed out your 401k and that's all you're doing, you don't have any money for opportunities. You're
Right.
stuck.
Right.
That 401k money is not available. And I know you can borrow against it or borrow from it technically,
Yeah.
but there's so many limitations. And if you leave your work, then no, that's not an opportunity fund.
Yeah.
But liquidity, and this is why the whole life insurance product works so well, is having the ability to borrow against it and go pursue that opportunity. And you gave an excellent example of one. I also find that people need to save monthly because that's kind of how our lives work.
Mm-hmm.
But opportunities tend to come along as every now and then, and they're more lump sum oriented, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, how are you going to build an opportunity if your capacity is 200 a month, 500 a month, 1,000 a month, but your opportunity is 30 grand or 50 grand or 100 grand or whatever the numbers are?
Right.
Well, you've got to have a place to save, as a verb, that monthly money so that it can build up to the lump sum to then go take advantage of your opportunity. So whatever that space is for you, again, let's just boil it down to whole life insurance and CDs and cash in the bank, high yield savings, maybe, because it's got to be liquid, right?
Right.
Then do that.
So let's talk a little bit about whole life insurance, because I've heard a lot of mixed opinions about whole life insurance. So give us your, explain to people how it works and then give us your take on it.
Super. So whole life insurance from companies like Guardian, Mass Mutual, New York Life, Northwestern Mutual, Penn Mutual is from a mutual company. It works like a credit union. I am not talking about Universal Life, which is like companies of John Hancock, Prudential, Pacific, Transamerica, et cetera. That's a completely different product. That is not what I'm speaking about. Whole life insurance, a couple hundred years old, depending on which company you're talking about. Very boring, very effective, very tax efficient, earning right now today net, like after the cost of the death benefit, after the cost of the commissions, after the cost of running the company, because you are an owner of those companies that I mentioned, probably around 4.5%. So super, super boring and immediately liquid. Well, within a day or two, within reason. This is not grocery money. It's opportunity money, right? So you borrow against it and then you go buy your neighbor's house or you go do whatever the business is that you're going to get started on or what have you. So you can contribute monthly. It builds without taxes at a very efficient rate. And now you can go utilize it for the opportunity that you want. That's what whole life insurance is and does. And you're right. There's massive amounts. One of the cool things about the internet is there's lots of information. And one of the really, really frustrating things about the internet is there's lots of information. So I don't think I've ever seen a financial product that has so much, what's the word I'm looking for? Like dissension, contention, like frustration around it. I mean, people literally will say, I hate life insurance. I'm like, whoa, what did it do to you? Or I love life, right? You got some real extremes. So again, how do you learn best? Figure that out. Then just go into learning mode and understand that there is a learning curve that must occur. Whole life insurance is designed to be used for the rest of your life. And so utilize it. And it really doesn't matter how old you are when you're starting. You can own it on other people if that's the thing for you, if you're not healthy or whatever. But it's a very efficient tool to use for opportunity funds. So that's the description of it. Now, You asked me two questions. What was the second thing you wanted me to do? I
Well, I
described.
just said your take on it, like,
Okay, got it.
which I think you kind of gave us as part
Yeah,
of your description. Yeah.
I am a fan of what works. I am obviously not a fan of what doesn't work. And what I can tell you is that whole life insurance works as long as you use it properly. And so, of course, there's times when it's not appropriate. There's some families that should not be involved with it. But for the bulk of America, in some form or fashion, and here's one of the nice things about it, you can start it with fairly low dollar figures per month. It doesn't require a lump sum. It works. It's boring and effective. And so I'm a fan of that because it works and it does the job of that opportunity fund very, very efficiently.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
So you just reminded me, and I think this is probably an okay time to talk about things like whether you should be saving for your kids' education or whether you should be saving for your own retirement. Like those are questions that often come up for new
Yes.
families.
Gosh, that's a biggie. So I want to introduce a concept called opportunity cost. This is an economic concept. It's real. It's not a marketing term. You actually probably studied it in high school or college, econ and accounting. And saving for a child's education has, assuming that the money then gets to the school and used for the education, has an unbelievable opportunity cost associated with it. So quick math, let's say you save up 50 grand, 100 grand, whatever your numbers are for college education. And then you send that money to the school and you're 40 years old. Is that yeah, that works. 40, 45 years old, right? When the child's ready to go to school.
Yeah.
Let me just use easy math. That 100 grand, and maybe it's over 4 years or whatever, 5 years, is now lost from your asset base for the rest of your life. So the 100 grand is not just the 100 grand you sent to the school. It's the opportunity for that money to grow from your 40s to your 50s to your 60s to your 70s to your 80s. And so it's very, very important that there's absolutely families out there that can do both. They have plenty of cash flow. They can save for college education, educate their kid. They can save for retirement, retire in a normal structure and be fine. But for a lot of families, it really is a choice. And so it's very important that people understand it's not just the money that you saved, it's the opportunity of that money. And we have to be very, very careful. And there's so many families that have destroyed their ability to retire in any semblance of the word because they saved money for their kids' education. They sent that money to school and now that money is gone. You're going to get hopefully an educated kid with a good job, et cetera, but opportunity cost is a real thing and we just don't think about it. If you ask 10 financial planner people out there, maybe one of them would come up with the term, but not the other 9 has been my experience. Maybe 2. Opportunity cost, again, real thing. It's the opposite of opportunity gain, right? Like we don't think about it, but that's real. And we don't do opportunity cost on our food. There's other things we don't do opportunity cost on, but as it relates to something like education, there's a huge opportunity cost there. I've got a book called Busting the College Planning Lies, and I prove all this numerically and mathematically, which gives me confidence, back to your first question, that I can help somebody with this because I know that I can prove the information. So if that's your gig, it's fine. Just understand what you're doing when you are saving for college in a way that you can't get that money back. So what that means for a lot of people is they probably should be more focused on retirement. But as you and I were just speaking maybe about 5-7 minutes ago in our talk, if all you're doing is maxing out your 401k, then that money is for retirement only. And you and I probably both know the statistics is the amount of people that take their quote retirement dollars out early is deplorable. It's like 70 or 80% of people when they leave jobs. So not of all people, but of people when they leave jobs, they cancel those 401ks, they cancel those pensions and profit sharings and 403bs. And they take that money, they pay taxes plus a penalty, and they go do whatever it is that they're going to do. So I am not a fan of max out your 401k. If you got plenty of money and you want to do that third, great. But first and second, get those emergency opportunity monies going so that you have the ability to use the money for an opportunity. If all of your dollars are locked up in a 401k plan or a 403b plan, you cannot start your business. You cannot take advantage of a real estate deal if it lands in your lap, etc.
Yeah, that's a great point. And even, I mean, even if you factor in the fact, the company matching and things like that, you still, today's money is more valuable than tomorrow's money for the most part. So if it's not growing fast enough, and if you're not aware of how much you're paying that manager to manage that money, and you've come to find out that half your money is going for that or whatever, it's just, I guess, learn what you can about what your options are.
Yeah. In my Busting Retirement Lies book, I've got numerical proof that the tax benefit that you get from the government for funding your 401k or 403b, and so the tax benefit is a positive, right? And whatever investment growth, which in theory should be positive,
In
are
theory.
yeah, are largely obliterated, like taken away by the management fees and the fact that you're taxed at the end. So you've got all this awesome potential that looks amazing, but the fact is, it's really right back down to the very dollars you put in. And I prove that numerically in the book. And it's a shock to most people.
Yeah, well, that's so. I'm glad you brought us back around to the books that you've written, because let's talk about the book that you have coming up.
Thank you for asking. Yes, yes. I do love to write books. I'm actually an English major, although I think if you looked at my emails, my English teachers would be rolling in their graves. However, the book thankfully always has a co-author. I've got 11 up. My 11th is coming. So there will be at the end of March, my 11th book on Amazon. I write them, I make them into Kindle versions, and I also read them. I've actually got Audible's versions on all of them. Only one of them was professionally done. I've done the rest. And I do that because I feel like that does address most learning modalities. You can either get your hands on a physical book, you can listen to an Audibles, or you can read it on Kindle. And I just adore talking about money, helping people with money. And a book is a really great way to do that. So my books are usually fairly specific and kind of one topic. I've got a couple of them that are sort of the whole meal deal, but for the most part, it's just veggies, just your hamburger, just the fries, etc. And yet the one that is coming up is called Busting the Scarcity Mindset. So it's my first one that's actually completely available to benefit anybody worldwide. The rest of them are more for United States people, because I write in America, and we have laws here around money that are different
Right.
than people in other countries. So Busting the Scarcity Mindset is your guide to becoming a prosperity thinker. And we all know that mindset's important, and it's a challenge, and it's a challenge every single day. I still need to work on busting scarcity mindsets, because it doesn't matter what's going on in my life. Every now and then, sometimes very often during the day, sometimes very rarely during the day, but every day, some message pops into my head, sits on my shoulder, however you want to word it, that is a scarcity message. And if I listen to that, I'm not going to be able to help as many people. I'm not going to do as well as I could if I busted that mindset and pushed it out and made it go sit over there and be quiet so that I could do the good work that I'm doing. And so there's very specific little baby steps to bust the scarcity mindset in the book. And there is a whole bunch of fun stories around various people, me and others, that have had amazing little baby steps of progress with busting the scarcity mindset. I don't feel like there's really anything in life that gets us good results that's a big silver bullet. I feel like all the things that get us good results in life are just little tiny baby steps. And so that's what we've got in that book.
Yeah. And I 100% agree, but I would like you to talk more about the the power, the value of mindset, and how it can help us sabotage or succeed.
So I'll share quickly. One of the stories in the book is when I was in college, I played on a competitive soccer team, and we would lose games and we would win games, right? Like at one of the seasons, we were the NCAA championships for our division. It was small school. Well, you have a choice when you lose a game. You can either be disappointed, frustrated, you can cry, those are all logical reactions. And I, through the guidance of my coach, would always let myself have that, if you will, gap reaction. So this is actually some terminology that Dan Sullivan at Strategic Coach introduced to me a long, long time ago. You can be in the gap, right? Like I wanted to win, I didn't win, and there's a space between here and there, and I'm mad, frustrated, tearful, whatever. Yeah. So I would let myself be that for 5 minutes. That's it. And then we're done, right? Because now let's collect the learnings. That's a real word, learnings, plural, and go into gain mode. So the way to not be in the gap and be in the gain instead is to stop measuring yourself from where you are today to where you want to be. Okay, there's all kinds of commentary out there about the value of goals, and I agree with some of that. But if we're constantly measuring ourselves from where we are today to where we want to be, we will always be tearful, frustrated, irritated, mad, fill in the blank, depressed, right? Whereas if instead we'll take just a moment to measure ourselves backwards from where we came and the progress that we've made. So after my 5 minutes of frustration, okay, what did we learn about our team in this game? What did we learn about the way that I played soccer in this game? We measured that progress that we've made. Then we can go forward again in the world and do good. And so whether we're children or adults, understanding it's a measuring stick, and we don't want to be constantly measuring ourselves forward. We need to just for a moment measure ourselves backward and the progress that we made, so that then we can go forward again with the inspiring goal or whatever it is out there that's in the future, but not measuring ourselves by that.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, that book, The Gap and the Gain, is perfect. You've very nicely summarized it, right? Like, should I be depressed that I didn't lose that last 5 pounds, or should I look back and be delighted that I lost 50 pounds, right?
Yes.
You do have to celebrate the wins every so often, because they you might have not completely won the game, but if you made a ton of progress since the last game, then you're definitely moving in the right direction, and that's all any of us can do.
Yep. Gap in the Gain by Dan Sullivan and Ben Hardy, super helpful book. And we've got some additional examples of that kind of switch in measuring in Busting the Scarcity Mindset. And the book's quoted, and I'm just grateful for all of the good that can do out there.
Absolutely. That's fantastic. So I guess we're sort of, running up against our deadlines here. We're running up against our deadline. So I just want to know, is there anything that you wish I would have asked you that we didn't touch on, or anything that you feel that you want to make sure that people take away from this, just to reiterate, or what would you like to say?
Well, thank you for that. I think a fun fact about Kim is that I started milking cows by hand when I was in 4th grade. And my sister got a milk cow a few years later, and she and I milked cows and sold the extra milk all through junior high and high school.
So a true entrepreneur.
And I have dealt with money ever since, because we had registered Holsteins, so they were expensive animals, and we showed in the fairs and we did very well most years. And we sold the milk. So even if we weren't doing well, I learned that it's all about cash flow. So a lot of people are really interested in net worth. That's a typical monetary measuring stick. But I really encourage people to think about cash flow and cash, which goes back to our savings as both a verb and a noun that we talked about earlier. So those are just some thoughts that I will leave with your listeners today, to just get clear on cash flow, because that's really where it's at. Net worth is just a measuring stick and not a very helpful one. No. Early on, you asked about people have a desire to figure out, like, am I going to make it? Like, will I have enough money to retire? Will I have enough money to live a long life? Which is such a great Phil definition that you have, the financial independence for a long life. I love that because we are going to be living a lot longer. Life insurance companies are out to 120. Like every illustration from a life insurance company is to age 120 today.
Cool. I like it.
Yes. So we need to be thinking about that. And I have some very specific things that I help people with in that realm to make sure that they can absolutely positively do it. And it is a joy to do. So I encourage people to reach out. We've got a special gift for your community. I know you'll put this in the show notes, but it's prosperitythinkers.com/Christine. And yes, absolutely, is a space where they can just learn a little bit more about some of the financial things that we recommend. And then I always welcome people to say, I learn best by reading. What else do you have? Or I learn best by listening, or I learn best by getting my hands on things.
Excellent. Kim, thank you so much. And thank you, listener, for listening. I wonder if you know anybody who'd like to have a better financial future. I bet you know a bunch of people, but why don't you just take a minute now and write down 5 names and forward this episode to them, because they will thank you. Kim will thank you. I will thank you. And you might be changing their lives. So that's my suggestion to you today. And be sure to join us next week and see what we have in store for you. Thanks.